Since late in the 19th century, Chase Collegiate School and its predecessors have had a profound beneficial effect on the quality of education in Waterbury and beyond. Though the school has evolved with the times, with new locations, new partnerships, and new ideas, the driving force is the persistent belief in the school's mission. Though the words may have changed over time, the philosophy of the school is well expressed in today's mission statement. We educate tomorrow's leaders and inspire in each student a lifelong passion for learning, personal achievement, and contribution to the community. In this film, you'll see the genesis of this philosophy and how that mission is still at the heart of everyday learning at Chase.
Waterbury had started out as a farming community. At some point it realized that wasn't going to work. So it collectively rolled up its sleeves and started making things. And very gradually, a trickle of manufactured items turned into a stream. And then by the time the Civil War was building, and there was a great call for all sorts of products, that stream turned into a torrent. And Waterbury became a major manufacturing city. You had people coming to the city from other parts of the country to take part as inventors, as managers, as salespeople, as doctors, as lawyers to serve this growing population. Some of the families got together in Waterbury. They put up some money. They bought property on the corner of Cook and Grove Street in Waterbury, formerly the Cook family property, and that's where they put up their school. It was operated by Reverend Williams and his wife primarily. They operated it successfully, as far as we can tell, for several years, but then either on their own volition or not, they moved on, and then the school shut down. There was this determination that they wanted this idea of a girls' school to succeed. So there was a year off to sort of collectively catch their breaths. And then the school reopened, and it was now called St Margaret School. And it was a boarding and a day school, still on the corner of Cook and Grove Street in Waterbury. And it was run by Dr. and Mrs. Russell. They made a go of it. The money was there. The determination was there, the population was there. They sustained it and made a success of it. Dr. Russell was the administrator, and his wife, Mary, was really the fiber of the life of the school. She was much beloved.
With the formation of the Alumni Association in 1882, the social spirit of the school blossomed. In fact, the first Alumni Association reunion was held that same year. Shortly thereafter, the Magpie literary magazine was first printed. In 1900, the Salmagundi was created, and the Glee Club became a popular institution. Not long after the loss of his wife in 1899, Dr. Russell relinquished his position as headmaster and entrusted the school to his young assistant principal, Mary Hillard. Years earlier, around 1880, Mary's unruly behavior at school required her to leave St. Margaret's, and she completed her education at Abbott Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. At the invitation of Dr. Russell in 1890, Mary returned to St. Margaret's. Within a year, she would assume complete management of the school. Motivated by encroaching urban development and the desire for an institution of her own, Mary initiated the purchase of land west over the hills of St. Margaret's, and a sister school was formed. The 1909 Salmagundi even contained photographs of St. Margaret's and Westover schools. The amicable partnership proved short-lived. Her departure was a blow to enrollment and academics and cast a pall on the school's future. St. Margaret's was left with 6 boarders to graduate.
One of the members of the Chase family wanted to have a tutor come down. There wasn't a school, a private school for boys that was really preparing them for prep school and then for college beyond that. He brought down Charles McTernan from Massachusetts, really for private lessons. And he took a look around and saw that there was an opportunity in Waterbury. A couple of years after he came down as a tutor, he started the school.
Mrs. McTernan was named Clara. She was just a delightful, friendly, wonderful woman, and was very tall, very imposing. I think she was taller than Charles McTernan. He was shorter and sort of sturdy, but he was like everybody's grandfather. He had the manner of a teacher.
He was a coach. He's a great believer in athletics. And he also was a great believer in summer camps, which was a tradition at McTernan for a really long time. His was down on the Connecticut shore, but it always struck me that he enjoyed this at least as much as running the school, if not more.
From the summer of 1913, Charles McTernan would return annually to the coast of Saybrook, Connecticut, to direct his beloved Crystal Beach Camp. The Great New England Hurricane of 1938 decimated the site and destroyed many of the McTernan School records. Undeterred, McTernan and his sons rebuilt the camp over the next 3 summers, and he continued to direct the boys' camp until his retirement in 1945. He expressed continuing love and support for his school and returned to Waterbury every spring to present diplomas through the 1960s. Back on Cook and Grove Street, a new headmaster sought to heal still fresh wounds after the contentious departure of Mary Hillard. Emily Monroe, an educator from Rhode Island with strong academic values, would go on to not only restore enrollment, but also transform the institution altogether. While Ms. Hillard was committed to preparing girls for traditional societal roles, college enrollment numbers were steadily rising for women, and Ms. Monroe emphasized academics with higher education in mind. Enrollment numbers soared. 1910 saw a 25% increase in students. Ms. Monroe's success continued, and before long, the school was operating at capacity. Burgeoning enrollment at St Margaret's began to tax the existing building. Enrollment increased so much that teachers could often be found teaching classes in hallways. To ensure that the school could grow to meet the demands of Waterbury's young women, a quiet, expansive parcel of land was purchased on Chase Parkway. Grades 5 through 12 would move to the scenic campus in September of 1928. The girls would witness the whatsoever sayings being inscribed in study hall beams, honor boards hung, and the Henry Peck organ installed. Reflecting their integral role in the founding and survival of St. Margaret's, the new drawing room and library would carry the namesake of Waterbury founding fathers Frederick J. Kingsbury and Augustus S. Chase.
You went to what they referred to as the little school, and that was right next to McTernan's, side by side. We had kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. And in kindergarten, I remember being taught how to weave. The girls, typical of the time, did the bedding and the furnishings of the little house that the boys built, because the boys would be in construction, of course. That was men's stuff. When I was about 13, I guess, the Hindenburg dirigible flew over Waterbury. And that was a big deal because Germany was planning transatlantic flights with the lighter-than-air craft. And they wanted us to see it because it was what was supposed to be an important period in history. So they let us go up on the top, on the roof of the school. Probably at the time I didn't realize how unusual that was. But then it was just within a day or two after that that it burned in New Jersey. It was I suppose it was the end of an era. Miss Adele was head of school, and I remember her as being very dignified, and I always felt sort of awed by her. A young prelate from the Episcopal Church would come out each morning, and he would read from the Bible, and we would have a sort of an abbreviated church service. But it was always fun because we had some very good-looking girls that were seniors, and the young prelates were quite young and unmarried and easily blushed, and so the girls found that really amusing. And I'm afraid we were not too biblically inclined, because we did have a Bible class and was taught by one of the prelates, and of course there was a lot of tee-heeing going. Social life was pretty much unisex. There wasn't that much opportunity. I well remember the whatsoevers painted on the beams in study hall, because for some reason or other those virtues impressed me and really gave you something to think about and build your life around. I feel I've had the best years possible, and primarily because of St. Margaret's.
1946 would bring a new headmaster to McTernan, Berkeley Hotchkiss. A former McTernan student and teacher, Berkeley continued the traditions instilled by Charles McTernan and brought with him a progressive agenda to grow the school. During his tenure, language training and athletics were introduced into the curriculum, and a gymnasium was built in 1955.
When I think of Berkeley Hotchkiss and what his virtues were and values, I think of the fact that I never saw him upset with any student. If there was reason to be upset, he would handle it without being upset. He was a very friendly, patient, hardworking gentleman. And it was progressive for the time, because Mr. Hotchkiss could have lined us up and taught us the same way I had been taught in the Catholic school, but it was more. It was just more creative. I think we learned under Berkeley Hotchkiss that learning was fun.
After Berkeley Hotchkiss left, Winston Ranft came in. He was a very commanding presence in the school. But what was interesting to me in retrospect is that when I came to the school, there was an entire new crew of very young, sort of post-World War II teachers on the staff. And they were picking up the first feelings of it being the 1960s. Things in the world were starting to heat up culturally, and this fresh crop of teachers was attuned to that coming world, and they imparted a lot of that, I thought, on the students in the classrooms. They were quite different from the headmaster in that respect, because I had him in class too for math, and it was a whole different scene there. Ranft's wife, Christine, was a wonderful presence in the school, and you remember her for leading the student body in song, for putting together productions several times a year, including some that she wrote herself. Christmas at Turner's Alley was a play that she wrote, and that was really pretty good, and it was great in that it had roles for just about every kid in the school. She also taught public speaking and began what later became known as declamations. We had a spring dance that was always memorable, because when you're a boy in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the girls tended to be taller than you were, so that was always a struggle on the dance floor.
Everybody would get together, and it was extremely innocent. But it was fun, because you get to see girls and dance with girls, put on records. That's what it was like in those days. But it was very much supervised, too, because it was in somebody's home, and their parents were there being vastly amused by us, I suppose. Extracurricular activities at McTernan were essentially sports.
Besides the plays that we had, sports were really the abiding interest of most of the kids. And on Columbia Boulevard, there's a field behind the school. There was six-man football, which was one of the great sports ever invented. The field was not quite a full-size football field, and we were not quite full-size ourselves.
Well, Miss Fairbanks, I remember when she came, first came, and she had a way about her to putting you right at ease, and you always had a sense, or at least I did, that she really was interested in you, and she cared about you and cared about what you thought. Everybody had great respect for her and great fondness, and she did a great deal for the school and left a great legacy behind her.
The resignation of Pauline Fairbanks in 1968 would bring drastic change. Long insulated from outside forces, a groundswell of social change would arrive at St. Margaret's with the introduction of a male headmaster. This man was Pearson Milker, a progressive educator from the Chadwick School. He arrived at St. Margaret's and discovered an institution largely unaffected by the changing times. Upon his first visit to St. Margaret's, Milker felt uneasy about what he described as an institution far removed from the evolving culture of the 1960s. It was no surprise to him that the school was suffering in attendance, and change needed to take place in order to survive.
What he found when he first came to the school was that it was sort of operating as though it was back in the 1940s. There were a number of day schools being started all over the country, and after the chaotic times of the late 60s and early 70s, there were upheavals on a number of college campuses, riots everywhere, and this somehow had filtered its way down to even the secondary schools. Some of them even went under as a result of this. The school itself was having tremendous problems at the time. The academic standards were declining, and above all, there were severe budgetary problems. The sad part about it was that college admissions were rather punk too, and the thing that happened of greatest consequence was the fact that Taft decided to go coeducational. Many of our students, in fact, I think 25 of the best and the brightest, went to Taft as day students. Having looked at all possible avenues, the Board of Trustees found the only possible solution. Boys. Our school didn't have boys. Somehow or other, this was what girls wanted all over the country.
Was it an easy change for St. Margaret's to become St. Margaret's McTernan and have boys on campus? No. It was exciting. It was scary. People wonder, are they going to smell? It was very, very difficult, I'm sure, for adults. Kids, we thought it was fun. I'm sure we weren't that cherubic about it. But in the essence of my 8th grade unit, I think there was kind of a gentle excitement, curiosity, enthusiasm, probably some resentment. Things were changing. I mean, the school could have closed. We could have all just had nowhere to go at both campuses. It was pretty close to that.
The numbers of students at the schools were dwindling because of economic reasons. And we wanted to sort of create a package that would be attractive to people and get the student body built up.
Coeducation was a big thing for a lot of schools to crack, to understand how are we going to do this. A lot of it was financially driven. You just needed more people to fill seats. You know, this was a tough economic time, and tough decisions had to be made. And they were. Whether they were right or wrong, they were the ones that, for the most part, people felt were the best in the long run. And I cherish that. And it reminds me not to be nervous of change.
From the merger in 1972, St. Margaret's McTernan School flourished on Chase Parkway. Enrollment increased steadily, the standard for academic excellence was restored, and the tradition of progress was restored as well. St. Margaret's McTernan burst forth as a standard-bearer for providing its students with the best possible atmosphere for growth, both in and outside of the classroom. In 2005, intent on addressing itself as a non-denominational institution, St. Margaret's McTernan sought an updated name to not only reflect its heritage, but to focus on the evolving nature of the institution. After a meticulous and thorough examination of possibility, a new, though very familiar school emerged, Chase Collegiate.
A lot of the students who go through Chase know a lot about the present and what they experience. Since I got the opportunity to be in the archives, I also learned a lot about the past. The head of the school at the time wrote up, with the administration, they wrote up a report of the school, and they would say what the school's accomplished, and next year, what they want to accomplish, what they want to do better. And it's really great because I think every year Chase where St. Margaret's McTernan was looking forward, and they were trying to improve the school while maintaining the base and the structure that they already had.
I think that what's really special about Chase is, everyone's talking about innovation right now, and Chase has lived innovation for its past 150 years. From its founding in 1865 to start an all-girls school was innovative. Not many people were doing that. And then the merger in 1972, the name change in 2005. What I find exciting about Chase and proud about its history is that they've been bold in their decision-making, but they've also been really thoughtful, and they've followed through on them.
We've launched several new programs that are different from the traditional book learning. Every kid has an iPad, every kid has his books. It's the way we receive information, it's the way we give information.
We teach to the students who are in front of us. And for some, they're athletes, for some, they're artists, for some, they're academicians, but for most, they're all three.
That's the direction of Chase, is that we are very cognizant of the future.
Having just graduated with the recent class of 2015, I can confidently say that I'm so prepared to go out into this world with all that Chase has taught me, and I'm proud to be part of the rich history of the school because it's such an amazing story to tell.
Looking back on the history of the school, each time there has been a difficult moment in the history of the school, or when there has been a difficult decision to be made, our forebearers who came before us, who were challenged with some of these difficult decisions, made these decisions, and the school moved forward, and each time it did, it got a little stronger. I don't think I will ever forget, after the vote was taken, it was absolute silence in the room at this momentous, which it was, decision that we had come to and had voted to change the name of the school. And as chair of this undertaking and chair of these 29 people who were part of this process, I am proud of the decision we made, keeping the best interests of the school always in the forefront, and what would move the school forward and have the school grow stronger in the next 150 years.